welcome back to One Man's Tracks. We've got the third group in a row that formed in 1993. This time, however, we're not in the States anymore. We're jumping up to Northern Europe. Something a little bit different for you today. I think it's pretty special. When I picked this CD up, I saw the skull on the cover and I thought, oh, cool, a metal album. There's a ton of metal groups that I've never heard of because the names kind of tend to blend into each other, unfortunately, but I grab it at any chance I get because finding heavier stuff secondhand seems to be something of a rarity, I guess, in my local area. People who buy the heavy stuff tend to either hang on to it or, I guess, throw it out and don't donate it. I don't know what the process is. Maybe they burn it ritualistically in some kind of metal ceremony, but who knows. I pick up a metal CD if I see it pretty much all the time. These guys, however, are not a conventional metal group at all. They're a symphonic metal group made up of 4 cellos that, using these instruments and electrifying them, it creates these just incredible, I guess orchestral is a good way to put it, but they've taken something that's classical and turned it into something pretty much brand new. They made their start and they built this niche out of doing Metallica covers with their big, amazing electric cellos. The band's original lineup consisted of Sibelius Academy students Paavo Lutjunen, Max Lilja, Antero Maninen, Aika Topinen, and Perttu Kivilakso. I'm not 100% on those pronunciations, but give me a break, I'm not from Finland. That first album, that Metallica covers album I'd mentioned, was released in '96 and actually caught the attention of Metallica. Their 5th show promoting that album, they opened up for their rock idols, releasing another album consisting mostly of cover songs in 1998 titled Inquisition Symphony. They'd follow it up with their 3rd in 2000. This is Cult, released through Mercury and Universal Records. It's a pivotal point in the evolution of Apocalyptica, with this containing mostly original compositions, and it even got followed up with a special edition the next year which contained their first tracks with vocal additives to it. This version, besides the percussion and the double bass, is purely cellos, and they're played in a manner that expands the musical potential of that instrument. It's more intense, it's more visceral, but it still manages to maintain that epicness, that huge, traditional, classical approach that this instrument typically provides. Taking their skills and pioneering a fascinating new movement. Make sure you've got some headphones or at least some decent speakers, because Apocalyptica put together a terrifying and primal backdrop that'll have you startled one moment and head banging the next. Yeah! Starting out with the track Path. I used to be a little intimidated by kind of the prospect of reviewing an instrumental album, but after doing a couple of them, I've grown quite fond of reviewing songs that have no lyrics and just picking apart them with my own kind of whatever interpretation. So starting out with Path, for instance, from the title alone, you've gotten a pretty decent idea of the starting point of this tumultuous journey. Gives me a vision already. They start you out with a light, bright, classical sounding approach, but then quickly they subvert expectations, taking you down a different road, one that's harder, rockier, metaler, faster, and just way more intense than you had expected. They're showing you the road, the path that Apocalyptica and their cult are gonna take as far as they will. Sharp glissandos, it's those Jaws-like screeches, the it's another appropriately titled track. This one's called Struggle. It's got this gut-punching opening that feels like a confrontation of sorts, and then the struggle is this sort of chase that's happening, and you're getting this differing perspectives of the chase, and it's becoming more intense, but it ends a little uncertainly. I'm not entirely sure if it was just someone creeping up to finish off the kill, or maybe there was something else that was going to happen, but I feel like this one's narrative could go on a little longer. Then you have romance that shows the more classical, brooding side of the instrument, where it gives you that feeling of sailing through rougher waters, that piratey feel. It rocks you to and fro. It's a beautiful dance, but it's pretty, but at the same time really precarious. Prey then flows nicely out of romance, a little more intensity, but not quite as much depth. In Memoriam follows it up, and it's the first of 2 tracks dedicated to their late sound engineer, Tapsa, who unfortunately passed away in a car accident in 1999. Initially a big change in sound, being lighter and more morose, but eventually, inevitably, the electric cellos blast onto the scene, exploding this one, just hitting it with some thrash metal intensity, before then, again, coming back down with that skillful, somber wanings that settles softly, kind of ending what I perceive to be the first act of this 2-piece album, if you were to split it up into 2 pieces. Then for the second act, you're thrown right back in it with the track Hyperventilation. It reaches this Flight of the Bumblebee's fever pitch that, spread across 4 instruments, makes for a pretty memorable cut. Now the second track dedicated to Tapsa, it's titled Beyond Time, and it feels like the band is starting to work past and through their feelings and find a path beyond their loss. It's another great adventurous track, similar feeling to Romance, but more driven, more focused, with a purpose in mind, just steadfast. Hope continues that mission further, a bit lighter at first. It cuts through any doubts and sets course on a path to confront whatever else stands in the way. I was curious what the title of the next track, Kamos, meant, and it turns out it's the Finnish word for polar night. This track, once again, intros you with these muted, plucky cellos that opens up into this intense energy that tries to whip up enough of that cold wind to just rip you right out of your home. I think my speakers aren't good enough because it's still not enough for me. It builds and builds, and the end of the song is the most intense it ever is, but I feel like they could get even louder, even more, just eyes to the back of my head, just hit me with it, just like staring into a wind tunnel kind of intensity. It's close, just maybe cheat and add another layer of cellos, because ooh, I want this one to just throw me out the window. The closer before the added cover songs is the longest track. It's titled Coma, and as the name may suggest, it's more subdued, but not totally stagnant. It's sort of a slow, spiraling descent into, really, I don't know what, I guess into the Hall of the Mountain King, which is the title of their first and maybe the best cover they've ever done. This Edward Grieg classic, done in the Apocalyptica style, gives it an ideal urgency, making it almost probably better than the original. Then you've got 2 relatively obscure Metallica covers that are decent, but honestly kind of feel unnecessarily tacked on, more of just a tribute to their first couple albums and what helped them break through to begin with. Their radical left field idea of making metal music with cellos is incredible, and really this album is where it finally started to become its own sound and get its beginnings. I love just where they've taken it from here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it right now. Max Lilia left the group in 2001, and they would add a drummer to the group for their self-produced next album called Reflections. His name is Mika Silin, and He remains a part of the group to this day, part of the Apocalyptica cult. They added briefly member Frankie Perez, who would sing on their album Shadowmaker, and they'd experimented with a number of other guest vocalists throughout their career up to that point. Just last year they released their 9th Symphony, another self-produced album titled Cell Zero. It's a return to instrumental form, being their most engaging work yet. I just love the beautiful layering, the orchestral highs and lows. If you found this maybe a little too harsh, you really might want to check out Cell Zero. They look at it as kind of a return to form, a back to the root of Apocalyptica, and man, it comes out just awesome. Certainly worth trying. These guys have amassed quite the following over their impressive over 25-year careers. If you have been fortunate enough to see Apocalyptica live with Metallica or without, I'd love to hear about your experience down in the comments. While I've still got you, make sure you like the video and or subscribe for next week's secondhand album review special. Woo! Take good care and rock on! Apocalyptica. Now time for sauna.